I listen to music all the time. In the car, at home, sleeping, or while solving complex quadratic equations. However, there is one thing I constantly wonder about. अगर इसने ये गाना बनाया इसकी personality क्या कमाल होगी? To find this out, we went on a search, but couldn't really find anything, so... And that is why we create Music Underground, a series जहां आप जान सकते हैं अपने favorite music artists और उनकी struggles के बारे में.
Welcome for our opening performance, Abdullah Siddiqui.
Singer-songwriter and electronic pop music producer, Abdullah Siddiqui.
Abdullah Siddiqui. I'm naturally someone who's very reserved and introverted, and the music industry is a lot of just like flash, charm, handshake. I've been making music for a long time. I started singing when I was really young, and then I learned how to play guitar when I was 9, and I started producing when I was 11. I've just sort of always naturally gravitated towards music, especially pop music. I was always this sort of person who would listen to whatever was, on the radio. I, watched a lot of like Disney Channel and Nickelodeon growing up, and every show had a soundtrack and every show had a theme song that I would memorize. Just in listening to that much music, I started to develop a sense for it. Inspired me beyond that point was Imogen Heap. She was the first one who I'd heard who was not just making music in the traditional sense, but taking the tropes of music and subverting them in interesting ways, and playing with sound in interesting ways. So I just went deeper and deeper into different genres, and I let that infiltrate my own work, experimenting with sound in new ways, exploring music as much as I can, and letting that inform my own work. With my sound and with my language, that presents some challenges, because I've always written in English, and I think that given the demographic that I'm playing to, that's pretty restrictive, because not everybody speaks English, not everybody understands English. The sound that I'm working in is still pretty foreign to most people, because most of our mainstream music is not electronic. I have had to sort of carve my own path in a lot of ways, because there's not many precedents for the kind of work that I'm doing. So there's no like guidelines, there's no rules to this. So I just have to keep working and hoping that it'll resonate. But beyond that, I think music in general is such a struggling industry. There's no sense of infrastructure around music. There's no platforms. There's no like steady form of revenue for a lot of artists. The music industry right now is in a weird place where there's no traditional structure to it. Like, I think most global industries have, record labels, and they have, those sorts of institutions. We don't have any of that. Most of our music is just created by and marketed by corporations that are using it as a marketing tool above all else. And while a lot of our greatest music has come out of that, and I've been a beneficiary of that, it's like the one problem with that at the end of the day is that it's inherently risk averse, because I think big brands, they're reluctant to try new things because they want to try and stick to the formula that works. And I think in recent years, the interesting thing is that most of our formulas have stopped resonating, particularly with the younger generation. So they have been like taking more and more risks. So that's why things are sort of up in the air right now. But for the most part, I think that it's not a sustainable model for as far as innovation is concerned. Part of why I started making electronic music is because of its ease, and I think that's in two senses. Like, the first sense in which that's true is that the global industry started making more electronic music because it's easier for studios to be investing money in software, and instead of like session musicians, it's just cheaper for them to make it that way. And so that then trickled down into my musical exposure, and that's why I was introduced to it, and that's why I learned to love it. It's also given me the greatest amount of control. When I'm making music, I try to inject meaning into every facet of it. It's not just in my vocal delivery, it's not just in my words, it's not even just in the composition, it's in the textures that I use, the sonic makeup of what I'm making, What I've discovered is that, like, while I enjoy the experience of playing with a live band, there's no way to use acoustic instruments and to really represent what my sound is. If I have to do a show, I'll usually end up doing it acoustic, just me and a guitar. But even that doesn't really represent what my sound is. Or if I just end up like playing a track and singing. Again, not an engaging show. That is sort of a struggle because live bands can, play their instruments. I don't really have an equivalent to that. I don't have a way to represent my sound live context. Music itself has been a constant in my life, so I can't say that it's changed me. But the practice of music is something that has been tremendously helpful in developing my skill sets in other areas of life. It's given me a managerial sense. It's given me sort of like a conductor-like ability to, just orchestrate different things. More broadly, I think working in music has sort of pushed me into the industry of music, Like I never planned for this to happen, but I suddenly find myself, dealing with the business side of things. And that's sort of been something that's pushed me out of my comfort zone in more ways than one. I've been really lucky to be at the center of that and see all of that happen around me and see all of the people that I've grown up listening to, people who I've admired for a long time, make the transition towards more electronic music. Personally, while I love performing and I love creating music and I love singing, I prefer to be curatorial and I prefer to be more of a, producer, I think, first and foremost. So I really just hope to produce for as many artists as possible in the future, and that sort of is such a fulfilling thing for me because then I get to explore other people's styles and bend myself for other people's taste and their, and their sonic, trademarks. And I want my career to take the sort of trajectory where I can produce for large projects and commercial projects, because I feel like that's really just kind of like a musician's playground, because you get to work with all sorts of voices and styles, and that's sort of the most exciting thing to me.